In the deep blackness of space, far from Earth, a hospital ship named Solace floated quietly. It was not like other ships. This one did not carry weapons or soldiers. Instead, it carried doctors, nurses, and supplies to help the sick and wounded. Its white metal skin shone softly under the light of a distant star. The words, "Medical Ship, Neutral Zone," were painted clearly on its side in big letters so everyone could see. No one, not even enemies, should ever harm such a ship. Captain Laura Hayes stood on the bridge, her hands resting lightly on the control panel. She was calm but always watchful. Her dark hair was tied back neatly, and her sharp eyes scanned the screen showing the empty space around them. Everything seemed peaceful. Too peaceful, some might say. But Captain Hayes trusted her crew and their mission. The Solace had saved thousands of lives over the years, helping humans and aliens alike. That was its purpose, and she believed no one would dare attack something so important. Dr. Ryan Carter walked through the wide halls of the ship, checking on patients. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. His job was to heal, not fight, and he took pride in it. Today, most of the beds were empty because they were traveling between planets. Still, there were a few people recovering from injuries or illnesses. One patient, a young alien child, smiled weakly at him as he passed by. Ryan stopped to check on her before moving on. He liked his work, but sometimes he wondered what dangers might be out there in the cold void of space. Ensign Emily Ross sat at her station in the communications room. She was new to the crew, fresh out of training, and eager to prove herself. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard as she monitored messages coming in from nearby ships and stations. So far, nothing unusual had shown up, just routine updates and friendly greetings. Emily glanced at the clock. Another hour until her shift ended. She hoped for something exciting to happen, not dangerous, just interesting enough to make her feel useful. But then, without warning, everything changed. A bright flash lit up the view screens on the bridge. Alarms blared loudly throughout the ship. Red lights started blinking, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Captain Hayes turned sharply toward her officers. "What's happening?" she demanded, her voice firm but calm. "It's an attack," shouted Lieutenant Paul Davis, the ship's navigator. "Multiple unknown vessels approaching fast." Laura's heart sank. How could this be? The Solace was supposed to be safe. Everyone knew it was a neutral ship. Who would do such a thing? The first blast hit hard, shaking the entire vessel. In the medical bay, Dr. Carter grabbed onto a table to steady himself. Patients cried out in fear. Back on the bridge, Captain Hayes gave quick orders. "Shields up. Divert all power to life support. And get me a message out. Tell them we're under attack." Emily typed furiously at her console, trying to send a distress signal. But something was wrong. The enemy ships were jamming their communications. "I can't get through," she said, panic creeping into her voice. "They've blocked us." More blasts rocked the ship. Panels sparked and smoke filled the air. Ensign Ross coughed, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to run, to hide, but she forced herself to stay seated. There had to be a way to call for help. Down in the medical bay, Dr. Carter worked quickly to protect his patients. He helped strap them into their beds to keep them safe during the violent shaking. His mind raced. Who were these attackers? Why would anyone target a hospital ship? On the bridge, Captain Hayes clenched her jaw tightly. She refused to give up. Her crew depended on her. The patients depended on her. "Keep trying," she told Emily. "We have to let someone know we're here." But deep down, she feared it might already be too late. The attack on the Solace grew worse with each passing second. The once peaceful ship now shook violently as energy beams tore through its hull. Sparks flew from broken panels, and smoke filled the air. Captain Laura Hayes stood firm on the bridge, shouting orders to her crew despite the chaos around her. "Get the wounded to safety," she yelled. "Seal off damaged sections before we lose pressure. Lieutenant Paul Davis worked frantically at his station, trying to plot a course that might take them out of danger. But it was no use. The enemy ships were too fast, surrounding the Solace like wolves circling their prey. Every time he tried to move the ship, another blast would force him to stop. The engines groaned under the strain, and warning lights flashed across every screen. Dr. Ryan Carter ran through the medical bay, dodging falling debris as he helped patients stay calm. Some of them screamed in terror, while others lay still, too weak to react. He grabbed a young alien child by the hand and led her to a secure corner. "Stay here," he said gently but firmly. "You'll be safe." Then he turned back to help others, even though he knew there wasn't much time left. Ensign Emily Ross sat frozen for a moment, staring at her console. Her fingers hovered over the keys, unsure what to do next. The enemy had jammed all communications, cutting off any chance of sending a distress signal. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She couldn't give up. Not now. Not when so many lives depended on her. Taking a deep breath, she began typing again, searching for any possible way to break through the interference. Outside, the sleek warships of the Krylos Collective loomed closer, firing relentlessly. Their weapons glowed bright red as they unleashed wave after wave of destruction. No one spoke on those ships. They didn't need to. Their actions made their intentions clear. This was not just an attack. It was a message, a warning to anyone who dared oppose them. Captain Hayes clenched her fists tightly as she watched the screens. Pieces of the ship broke away, drifting into space like forgotten memories. She thought about the people aboard, her crew, her patients, and how helpless they were against such overwhelming force. Still, she refused to surrender. "We won't let them win," she muttered under her breath. Turning to Lieutenant Davis, she ordered, "Prepare escape pods for evacuation." Davis hesitated. "What about you, Captain?" "I'm staying until everyone else is safe," she replied without hesitation. As the order spread, panic erupted among the remaining crew members. Some rushed toward the escape pods, clutching whatever belongings they could carry. Others stayed behind to help those too injured to move. Dr. Carter moved between them, offering words of encouragement even as his own fear threatened to overwhelm him. He strapped himself into a harness and carried a critically ill patient to the nearest pod, making sure they were secured safely inside. Emily finally found a faint signal, a small window of opportunity to send a message. With trembling hands, she typed out a desperate plea for help and sent it into the void. Whether anyone would receive it or act on it, she didn't know. All she could do was hope. The Krylos ships continued their assault, showing no mercy. Explosions rocked the Solace tearing apart entire sections of the vessel. Fire spread quickly, consuming everything in its path. Smoke choked the corridors, forcing survivors to crawl along the floors just to breathe. Captain Hayes remained on the bridge, her face streaked with soot and sweat. She stared at the monitors, watching as more and more of her ship disappeared. Finally, the last escape pod launched, carrying the remaining survivors away from the doomed vessel. Only then did she allow herself to step back, her body trembling with exhaustion. Moments later, the Solace shuddered one final time before going dark. Its white hull, once a symbol of hope and healing, was now scared and lifeless. The Krylos ships pulled back, leaving behind only silence. Far away, Earth received Emily's message. At first, no one believed it. How could anyone attack a hospital ship? But as images of the ruined Solace appeared on screens across the planet, disbelief turned to anger. People gathered in streets and squares, demanding justice. Leaders held emergency meetings, vowing to respond with strength. For now, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what Earth would do next. The news of the Solace destruction spread quickly across Earth. Images of the battered ship floated on screens in homes, offices, and government buildings. People stared in shock at the twisted metal and burned-out corridors that had once been a place of healing. The attack was unthinkable, a violation of every rule and agreement meant to protect neutral ships. For hours, the world seemed to stop as humanity tried to process what had happened. Admiral James Logan sat in his office, staring at the reports piled high on his desk. His face was grim, his jaw tight with anger. He had seen war before, but this was different. This wasn't just an act of aggression. It was an act of cruelty. The Krylus Collective hadn't attacked a military base or a weapons factory. They had targeted doctors, nurses, and patients, innocent people who only wanted to help others. Logan picked up the phone and called Commander Alex Rivera, one of his best strategists. "Get to my office," he said, his voice low but firm. "We need to talk." Minutes later, Rivera arrived, followed by Lieutenant Olivia Grant, an intelligence officer known for her sharp mind. Both looked serious, their expressions matching the gravity of the situation. Logan wasted no time. "We have to respond," he said, leaning forward in his chair. "But we can't just lash out blindly. We need a plan, a good one." Rivera nodded. "Agreed, sir. If we act without thinking, we risk making things worse. But if we strike smartly, we can send a message they won't forget." Lieutenant Grant pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through data. "I've been studying the Krylus Collective," she explained. "They're ruthless, but they're not invincible. Their supply lines are stretched thin, and their leadership is arrogant. If we hit them where it hurts, cut off their resources, we can cripple them." Logan listened carefully, his eyes narrowing as he thought about their options. "What about retaliation?" he asked. "How do we make sure they understand this isn't something they can walk away from?" Rivera leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "We show them we mean business. A surgical strike against key targets, supply depots, communication hubs, maybe even their command center. It has to be precise, though. No unnecessary casualties. We don't want to give them an excuse to paint us as monsters." Grant nodded in agreement. "And we use our fleet wisely. Speed and surprise will be our greatest advantages. They won't expect us to move so quickly after losing the Solace *. As the three officers talked, word of the attack reached ordinary citizens. In cities around the globe, protests erupted. Thousands of people gathered in parks and squares, holding signs and chanting slogans. Some carried pictures of loved ones who had served aboard the Solace *. Others simply stood silently, their heads bowed in mourning. The message was clear. Humanity would not stand idly by while its values were trampled. Among the crowd was Private Daniel Harper, a mechanic turned soldier. He stood quietly, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Harper had joined the military late in life, driven by a desire to make a difference. Now, looking at the faces around him, he felt a surge of determination. Friends of his had been aboard the Solace *, and their loss weighed heavily on his heart. This fight wasn't just about revenge, it was personal. Back at headquarters, Admiral Logan ended the meeting with a simple statement. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "We move within 48 hours. Rivera and Grant saluted and left the room, already planning their next steps. As night fell over Earth, the lights in military bases stayed on. Ships were readied, weapons checked, and crews briefed. Everyone knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about punishing the Krylus Collective. It was about proving that humanity would defend its principles, no matter the cost. In the quiet moments between preparation and action, soldiers like Harper found themselves thinking about the Solace *, about the lives lost and the ideals betrayed. When the time came, they would fight not just for justice, but for hope, for the belief that peace could still exist in a troubled galaxy. The United Defense Fleet sprang into action with a speed that surprised even its own members. Ships from every corner of human-controlled space began converging on Earth's primary staging ground, a massive orbital platform known as Delta Station. The station buzzed with activity as technicians worked tirelessly to prepare the fleet for battle. Engineers climbed over the hulls of cruisers and fighters, checking engines, calibrating weapons, and ensuring every ship was ready for the mission ahead. Commander Alex Rivera stood on the bridge of the flagship Eclipse watching the preparations unfold. His sharp eyes scanned the screens showing the growing armada outside. Dozens of ships, big and small, floated in formation, their crews working around the clock. He felt a mix of pride and tension. This was the largest mobilization humanity had ever attempted, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Lieutenant Olivia Grant sat nearby, her tablet glowing softly as she reviewed intelligence reports. She tapped the screen, highlighting key locations within Krylos territory. "Their main supply depot is here," she said, pointing to a cluster of coordinates. "If we hit it hard enough, we can disrupt their entire operation." Rivera nodded. "Good. And what about their defenses?" "They've got heavy patrols, but they're spread thin," Grant replied. "If we move fast, we can slip past them before they know what's happening." Meanwhile, down on one of the smaller ships, Private Daniel Harper worked alongside his fellow soldiers, checking equipment and running drills. Harper wasn't used to being part of such a large force. As a mechanic, he had spent most of his career fixing machines, not preparing for combat. But now, surrounded by men and women training for war, he felt a strange sense of belonging. These were his people, and they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. Captain Jessica Moore, a skilled pilot, walked among the ranks, offering encouragement. Her blonde hair was tied back in a tight bun, and her green eyes sparkled with determination. "Remember," she told the pilots gathered around her, "speed is our advantage. Stay sharp, stay focused, and trust your instincts." As the hours passed, the mood grew more intense. Soldiers checked their gear one last time, making sure rifles were loaded, helmets fit snugly, and oxygen tanks were full. Everyone knew this mission could mean life or death, for them and for humanity. Admiral James Logan addressed the fleet via a live broadcast. Standing tall in his uniform, he looked directly into the camera, his voice steady and commanding. "Today, we fight for justice," he said. "We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." The attack on the Solace was an act of cowardice, and we will not let it go unanswered. Together, we will show the galaxy that humanity stands united. His words echoed across the fleet, reaching every ship and every soldier. In the silence that followed, resolve hardened. This wasn't just a mission, it was a promise. On board the Eclipse Rivera gave final instructions to his team. "Our goal is simple: hit hard, hit fast, and get out. No unnecessary risks. We need to send a message, not start a war." Grant added, "Stick to the plan and watch each other's backs. We're stronger together." Finally, the moment came. Engines roared to life, and the fleet began its journey into the unknown. Ships moved in perfect formation, their sleek designs cutting through the darkness of space. For many, this was the first time leaving Earth's orbit, and the vast emptiness ahead filled them with both awe and fear. Private Harper stared out of a viewport as the stars stretched endlessly before him. He thought about the friends he had lost on the Solace. Their faces lingered in his mind, giving him strength. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready. The fleet pushed onward, heading toward the heart of enemy territory. Every crew member knew the danger they faced, but none hesitated. They carried the hopes of billions with them, determined to prove that humanity would not back down. Not now. Not ever. The fleet moved silently through the cold darkness of space, its ships gliding like shadows toward Krylos territory. Commander Alex Rivera stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, his eyes fixed on the screens showing their progress. The mission was risky, but they had no choice. Humanity's future depended on this moment. Lieutenant Olivia Grant sat at her station nearby, monitoring the enemy's movements. She tapped her tablet, analyzing data as it came in. "Their patrols are active," she reported, her voice calm but urgent. "But there's a gap in their defenses near the edge of the nebula. If we time our approach right, we can slip through unnoticed." Rivera nodded. "Good work, Lieutenant. Let's take advantage of that opening." He turned to the navigation officer. "Adjust course. Keep us off their radar." The fleet adjusted its path, weaving carefully between asteroids and clouds of gas. The crew worked quietly, their focus sharp. Everyone knew one wrong move could give them away. Tension hung thick in the air, but no one showed fear. They had trained for this, and now it was time to act. As they neared the nebula, Captain Jessica Moore led a group of fighter pilots ahead of the main fleet. Her ship darted through the swirling colors, staying just out of sight of the Krylos patrols. "Stay close," she whispered into her communicator. "We're almost there." Suddenly, alarms blared. A Krylos patrol ship appeared from behind an asteroid, its weapons charging. Moore reacted instantly, spinning her fighter into a tight roll to avoid the first blast. "Ambush," she shouted. "They'd spotted us." The battle began in an instant. Energy beams streaked across the void as human fighters clashed with Krylos ships. Explosions lit up the darkness, shaking the smaller vessels. Moore's hands moved quickly over the controls, her fighter twisting and turning as she dodged enemy fire. She fired back, hitting one of the Krylos ships square in its engine. It exploded in a burst of light, debris scattering into space. On the bridge of the Eclipse asterisk, Rivera watched the chaos unfold. "We're committed now," he said firmly. "Push forward. Don't let them regroup." The larger ships joined the fight, their heavy cannons roaring to life. Bright flashes filled the screens as the humans fought to hold their ground. The Krylos were fierce, but humanity had something they didn't: teamwork. Pilots covered each other, drawing enemy fire so others could strike. Engineers scrambled to repair damage mid-battle, keeping the ships in the fight. Private Daniel Harper waited anxiously aboard his transport ship, gripping his rifle tightly. His job wasn't in the cockpit or on the bridge. It was on the ground. Soon, he would lead a squad to disable a key supply depot deep in enemy territory. For now, though, all he could do was watch as the battle raged outside. Captain Moore's fighter zoomed past another Krylos ship, firing a missile that struck its target dead on. The enemy vessel broke apart, its pieces floating aimlessly. "That's 3 down," she muttered to herself, scanning for her next opponent. Her heart pounded, but her mind stayed clear. She couldn't afford to make mistakes. Not here. Not now. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Grant kept feeding real-time updates to the commanders. "Their reinforcements are coming," she warned. "We need to finish this fast." Rivera clenched his fists. "Tell the fleet to push harder. We're almost through." The humans pressed their advantage, pushing the Krylos ships back. One by one, the enemy retreated, overwhelmed by the ferocity of the attack. The way ahead cleared just enough for the fleet to break through. As the last Krylos ship exploded in a fiery burst, Moore exhaled sharply. "Clear," she said into her communicator. "Path is open." Rivera gave the order to advance. The fleet surged forward, leaving the battlefield behind. They had won the first round, but everyone knew the hardest part was still ahead. The supply depot lay ahead, heavily guarded and critical to the Krylos war effort. Taking it out would hurt them badly, but it wouldn't be easy. Harper tightened his grip on his rifle. This was it, the moment they had prepared for. As the transport ships detached from the main fleet and headed toward the planet below, he felt a mix of fear and determination. They were going to strike back, for Earth, for the Solace asterisk, and for everyone who believed in peace. Whatever happened next, they were ready. The transport ships descended quickly toward the planet's surface, their engines roaring as they broke through the atmosphere. Below them lay the Krylos supply depot, a sprawling complex of warehouses, factories, and docking bays, surrounded by high walls and armed guards. It was a fortress designed to withstand attacks, but humanity had come prepared. Private Daniel Harper led his squad off the transport ship as soon as it touched down. His rifle was slung across his chest, and his helmet visor glowed faintly in the dim light. Around him, soldiers moved with purpose, spreading out to secure the area. The air smelled strange, like burnt metal mixed with something sharp and chemical. Harper ignored it, focusing on the mission ahead. "Remember the plan," he whispered into his communicator. "We hit hard and fast. Disable their systems, then fall back to the extraction point." Sergeant Marcus Lee, a veteran soldier with years of experience, nodded as he joined Harper. "Stay close," he said. "These guys won't go down easy." The squad advanced carefully, sticking to the shadows cast by the towering buildings. Lights from guard towers swept across the ground, forcing them to move quickly between cover. Harper's heart raced, but his movements were steady. He knew one mistake could cost lives. Engineer Samantha Clark stayed near the rear of the group, her toolkit strapped to her side. Her job wasn't to fight. It was to sabotage. She carried small devices called disruptors, which could disable machinery and lock doors. As the squad reached the first warehouse, she knelt down and began attaching a disruptor to the control panel. Her hands moved quickly, her fingers steady despite the tension around her. "This'll take 30 seconds, she said softly, glancing over her shoulder at Harper. "Keep me covered." Harper signaled for 2 soldiers to watch the entrance while the rest kept moving forward. Gunfire erupted nearby as Krylos guards spotted them. Bright flashes lit up the darkness as bullets ricocheted off walls and sparked against the ground. Harper fired back, taking down one of the guards before ducking behind a crate for cover. "We're pinned," shouted one of the soldiers. "Hold your positions," Harper yelled back. He turned to Sergeant Lee. "Can we flank them?" Lee studied the layout quickly. "There's an alley to the right. If we split up, we can hit them from both sides." Harper nodded. "Do it." The squad divided, half following Lee while the others stayed with Harper. They moved swiftly, using crates and vehicles for cover. When they reached the alley, Lee gave the signal, and both groups opened fire at once. Caught off guard, the Krylos guards scrambled to respond, but it was too late. One by one, they fell. Back at the warehouse, Samantha finished her work. The disruptor beeped softly, signaling success. "Done," she said, standing up. "Their security system is offline." Harper smiled grimly. "Good job. Let's keep moving." The squad pushed deeper into the complex, heading for the central command center. Along the way, they encountered more resistance, guards, automated turrets, even drones, but they fought through it all. Each victory brought them closer to their goal. Inside the command center, chaos reigned. Alarms blared loudly, and technicians ran frantically, trying to restore order. Harper and his team burst in, weapons raised. "Nobody move," Harper shouted. The Krylos commander, a tall figure clad in dark armor, stepped forward. His voice was cold and commanding. "You think this changes anything? You're too late." Harper didn't hesitate. "Maybe, but this sends a message." With that, he signaled for Samantha to plant another disruptor. Within moments, the entire facility went dark. Outside, the fleet waited anxiously for the signal. When it came, a bright flare shot into the sky. They knew the mission was complete. The humans had struck a heavy blow to the Krylos collective. Now, it was time to leave. As the transport ships lifted off, carrying the squad back to safety, Harper looked down at the burning depot below. They had done what they came to do. The war wasn't over, but tonight, humanity had proven it wouldn't back down. As the transport ships soared back into space, the humans could see the damage they had caused. Fires burned brightly across the Krylos supply depot, sending thick plumes of black smoke into the sky. Explosions continued to ripple through the complex as secondary blasts tore apart what remained. The mission had been a success, but no one cheered. The cost of war weighed heavily on them all. Back aboard the flagship Eclipse Asterisk, Commander Alex Rivera stood on the bridge, watching the screens that showed the destruction below. His face was calm, but his eyes betrayed the weight of command. "Casualties?" he asked quietly. Lieutenant Olivia Grant checked her tablet. "Minimal on our side, sir. 3 injured during the ground assault, but nothing serious." Rivera nodded, though he didn't look relieved. "And the Krylos?" Grant hesitated before answering. "Their losses were high. Most of their forces at the depot are neutralized." "But," she paused, glancing up at him. "The commander escaped." Rivera clenched his jaw. Of course he did. He turned away from the screens, staring out at the endless void of space. They had dealt a heavy blow, but the fight was far from over. The Krylos Collective would not take this lying down. They would retaliate, and when they did, humanity needed to be ready. On board one of the smaller ships, Private Daniel Harper sat quietly in the corner of the troop bay. His helmet rested on his lap, and his hands were still trembling slightly from the adrenaline rush of battle. Around him, other soldiers talked softly, sharing stories, or simply sitting in silence. No one felt like celebrating. They had won, yes, but it didn't feel like victory. Sergeant Marcus Lee walked over and crouched beside Harper. "You okay, soldier?" Harper looked up, forcing a small smile. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "The people we lost," Harper admitted. "The ones on the Solace asterisk. I keep wondering if this is enough. If it'll ever be enough." Lee sighed, nodding slowly. "It's not about making things even. It's about stopping them from doing it again. That's why we're here." Harper thought about that for a moment, then gave a slight nod. "I guess you're right." Meanwhile, Captain Jessica Moore returned to her fighter after refueling. Her ship bore fresh scars from the earlier dogfight, but she didn't care. As long as it flew, she'd use it. She climbed into the cockpit and ran a quick systems check, ensuring everything was working properly. When she finished, she leaned back in her seat, letting herself relax for the first time in hours. The fleet regrouped above the planet, its ships forming a tight formation as they prepared to leave Krylos territory. Admiral James Logan addressed the crew via a live broadcast. "Today, we struck back against those who attacked us without cause," he said, his voice firm but weary. "We have proven that humanity will not stand idly by while others harm the innocent. Let this serve as a warning to anyone who seeks to threaten us." His words echoed across the fleet, reaching every ship and every soldier. In the quiet moments that followed, many reflected on what they had done and what might come next. The Krylos Collective was wounded, but not defeated. This was only the beginning. Engineer Samantha Clark sat in the mess hall, picking at her food without much appetite. She wasn't used to combat zones. Her skills lay in fixing machines, not fighting wars. Yet here she was, part of something bigger than herself. She glanced around the room, seeing the tired faces of her fellow crew members. Despite everything, they had pulled together. That gave her hope. Farther away, Lieutenant Grant studied new intelligence reports. The data painted a grim picture. The Krylos were already mobilizing reinforcements. Their leaders were furious, vowing revenge. Humanity's window of advantage was closing fast. But for now, there was a brief moment of calm. The fleet moved steadily toward home, carrying its survivors and its scars. They had struck a blow for justice, showing the galaxy that Earth would not tolerate acts of terror. What came next was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they had drawn a line in the stars. Crossing it meant war, and humanity was ready to fight. The Krylos Collective's leaders were brought before an intergalactic tribunal, their faces pale and defiant as they faced the charges against them. The courtroom was filled with representatives from across the galaxy, humans, aliens, and neutral parties alike. Images of the destroyed Solace flickered on large screens behind the judges, a stark reminder of the crime that had been committed. Humanity's message was clear. No one could act with impunity. Admiral James Logan stood near the back of the room, his arms crossed as he listened to the proceedings. He didn't feel satisfaction, just a deep weariness. The war had taken its toll, not just on Earth, but on everyone involved. Still, justice had to be served. If the galaxy allowed such atrocities to go unpunished, it would only invite more violence. Captain Laura Hayes also attended the trial, though she barely recognized herself in the polished uniform she wore. Her once steady hands trembled slightly as she carried a small container holding the ashes of her fallen crew members. She had returned to Earth after the attack on the Solace *, carrying both survivors and the remains of those who hadn't made it. Now she spoke at a memorial service held in honor of the victims. "We lost good people," she said, her voice steady despite the pain in her heart. "Doctors, nurses, patients, all of them innocent. They believed in helping others, even when it meant risking themselves. Today, we remember them. And tomorrow, we work harder to make sure no one else suffers like they did." Her words resonated deeply with those who heard them. Across Earth, memorials were erected in tribute to the Solace *. Its name became a symbol of resilience, a reminder of what humanity stood for, and what it refused to tolerate. Back at United Nations headquarters, Admiral Logan addressed world leaders and diplomats. "This was not just an attack on us," he said firmly. "It was an attack on the principles we hold dear: peace, neutrality, and compassion. They matter, but they must be protected. We cannot rely solely on goodwill. We need stronger alliances, stricter laws, and better enforcement." His speech sparked action. New treaties were drafted, bringing together planets and factions that had long been divided. Joint defense agreements were signed, ensuring that no single power could dominate the galaxy unchecked. Humanity took a leading role in these efforts, proving itself not just as a warrior race, but as a builder of bridges. Private Daniel Harper watched the changes unfold from his post aboard a rebuilt hospital ship. It wasn't the Solace *. Nothing could replace that, but it carried the same mission. As he walked through its halls, helping patients recover, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't known before. The scars of war still lingered, but so did hope. Dr. Ryan Carter worked alongside him, treating injuries and saving lives. He often thought about the young alien child he had helped during the attack on the Solace *. Somewhere out there, she was alive because of him. That thought kept him going, even on the hardest days. In space, Captain Jessica Moore flew patrols near Earth's borders, her fighter always ready for whatever might come next. She knew peace was fragile, but she also believed in humanity's ability to protect it. Every sunrise she saw from orbit reminded her why they fought. As time passed, the galaxy began to heal. The Krylos Collective was weakened, its influence fading. Other factions saw what happened when you crossed Earth and chose cooperation over conflict. Slowly, trust started to grow where fear had once ruled. Humanity had proven itself capable of both strength and mercy. Though scars remained, new beginnings blossomed. The stars seemed a little brighter now, shining with the promise of a future shaped by unity rather than division. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Earth and the galaxy would face them together.